I call to order the City of Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals for September the 23rd, 2021. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Clapper,
Here.
Throckmorton,
Here.
Burrell,
Here.
Sonborn.
Here.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We have the approval of minutes from July the 22nd, 2021. And Jackie, we only have 2 overlapping members at this point. Is that sufficient? It would have to be, I imagine.
Yes, I believe that you do not have to be present at the hearing to vote affirmatively on the minutes. Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Yeah, Michael Rooker, city attorney for the city. Yeah, that's correct. You do not have to be present. You do not have to have been present at the meeting in order to vote yes on a motion to pass the minutes.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of our, what is the date?
The 22nd of July.
22nd of July.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Motion to approve minutes. Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Sonborn,
Yes.
and Clapper.
Yes,
Great. Thank you.
great, thank you. Reports, resolutions, and communications.
Yes, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. Apologies again for the technical issues we're having here this evening.
Recording in progress.
Great. I would like to welcome Jessica Sonborn. She is going to be our alternate mayoral appointment BZA member. Eric Coyne is going to join us as the regular BZA member, one of our mayoral appointments, but was unable to be here this evening. And so Jessica was thankfully able to join us. So welcome, Jessica. And thank you for everyone for being patient as we're trying to fill out our 5 required members. And that's the only report I have. Thanks.
Okay, welcome, Jessica, and feel free to ask any questions during the hearing. If things aren't clear, we'll do our best to explain things since this is your first time out. Thank you so much for agreeing to serve. So this evening, we have 2 petitions that are continued to our October 21st meeting. That is V-16-21, Michael Corradro, I think I said that, for Johnson Creamery. I think I said that correctly. And then CU-18-21, Sean Urton, that is 412 East 4th Street. This evening, we'll hear 4 petitions. The first one is CU/V-19-20, Robert Iatarola. That's 1504 West Arlington Road. Then 5-V-08-21 Starbucks Coffee Company on Liberty Drive. The next will be CU-13-21 Marissa Engel, 522 East Kirkwood Ave. And then finally, V-17-21 Strouser Construction Company, 1300 North Lincoln Street. Okay, so we are ready to hear CU/V-1920 Robert Iatarola. Can we please have a staff report?
Great, thank you. Can you see my screen? Okay. Here we have the petition. It is located on West Arlington. As Ms. Clapper said, it is located at 1504 West Arlington Road. Just a moment, excuse me. The property is 1 acre. It is currently zoned residential multifamily, and the comprehensive plan designation for this area and the area surrounding it is neighborhood residential. And there is currently a duplex on the site, as well as an accessory garage there on the western portion of the property near the road, near Arlington. And the surrounding uses include single family and multifamily residential. The petitioner operates a pallet business, where he collects pallets and stores them on this site and then moves them two other locations from the property. So the request originated because the department received a complaint about a business operating from this site. That was in July of last year that we contacted Mr. Iadarola for the first time, and then contacted again in September of last year, and heard back from him that he wanted to request the conditional use approval to be able to do a home occupation. He would also, at the time, the property was zoned residential medium lot, R2. Since then, as you know, we've updated the zoning maps, so the property was rezoned to RM this year. He also is requesting a variance to allow deliveries to the property. At the time of filing, he would have also needed variance related to operating a home occupation in an accessory structure, but that was a regulation that was altered with the last code update. So part of the reason that you're seeing this a year later is that we were working with the petitioner to put this petition on hold. He did file, quite quickly once we were able to get in touch with him about the violation, but we decided to wait and see what happened with the UDO update. And then, of course, we've had some quorum issues this year, so he got pushed back a little bit. So the petition that you're seeing now, again, is for conditional use approval for home occupation for his pallet business and for a variance to allow deliveries for that business to the property. So the petitioner submitted this proposed site plan. You can see the home duplex is here. This is facing west. And then he has shares a driveway with the neighbors immediately to the north. And there is an existing garage. Now he would like to put a larger structure up on the back of the property. Home occupation standards, besides having to meet the typical conditional use standards, have 13 of their own standards that have to be met. And the issue with the proposal and the way that the business operates now is that it does not meet all of those standards. So here were just some of the original from last year images that we received from our enforcement staff when the notice of violation was sent. This is the shared driveway, and these here on the right, this small view of a garage here on the right with the pallets in front is Mr. Iadarolla's side. And then sometimes it looks like this, and there are pallets in the front, and then this is his truck, I believe, that he uses to move those around the property and take them to other locations. For those unfamiliar with home occupation, the idea of home occupation is that you can run a small business from your residence. And the gist of the 13 requirements is basically that you can hardly tell anything's there, and you're not having a negative effect on your neighbors, and you're not changing the residential character of the area. And so all of the requirements try to get at that. So I will briefly go over those and then discuss the ones that we think may have issues on this site. So the first is that obviously you have to live at the site if you would like to run a home occupation. You can only have a limited number of non-resident employees. I believe that Mr. Iadarola has none. There is a maximum floor area requirement, and that is what was changed with the code update. And basically what is allowed now under the new code is that at this site, because it's zoned RM, the maximum total cumulative square footage that could be used on this site for a business and an accessory structure is 840 square feet. The petitioner currently has a garage that is about 360 square feet per the county property record card, meaning that he has about 480 square feet to work with if he did want to put up a pole barn or some sort of other accessory structure in the back of the lot. That's not a lot. So for this type of business, to be able to maneuver inside of a structure. So you will find you've probably gathered in my report and in my presentation that some of this approval is a little bit theoretical. What is there now doesn't mean. It's clear that he is not going to be able to operate this business or how he's operating this business now can't meet home occupation standards. The department thinks that were some changes made to the site and how it is being operated, that it likely could meet the standards. Whether or not he will be able to do that or is interested in meeting those is kind of what we'll be discussing here tonight and what is kind of included in the conditions. So again, related to square footage, to run the home occupation in an accessory structure, it would need to be a maximum of 840 square feet. In all likelihood, that would probably mean altering or taking down the structure he has now and building a larger one on the back of the site. So we included a condition of approval indicating that the use has to take place entirely within an accessory structure. You aren't allowed to run a home occupation outside of a building. And again, that gets back to what I mentioned at the beginning, where home occupations, we want to encourage them. We want to encourage small business. They aren't appropriate in residential areas if they're changing residential character or affecting the neighbors negatively. So that's number 3. And then that's one that we think there may be an issue with. You are allowed to run multiple home occupations, but in the same maximum square footage. That's a non-issue here. This is the only business. Residential character, we do think if he can run the business inside of a large accessory structure, he could, as long as he was not doing anything outside of the building, we do not think that he would be negatively affecting the residential character of the area. He's not proposing separate locations and entrances. He would just be using his residential driveway. The 7th one is one that we also think may have issue, and that is because of one of the pictures I showed you, or in both pictures I showed you, the pallets are stacked up outside. The petitioner also made mention of using an outside trailer to store wood, kind of extra wood pieces, and then dumping that one's full. Both of those activities can't be done under a home occupation. You cannot run part of the business outside of the building. So all of that storage, unloading and loading every day, the scrap storage for eventual dumping, all of that would have to take place in a building. So if that is possible, we added a condition of approval. If that's possible, then he could run the business here. Excuse me. 8 and 9 are kind of geared toward more traditional home occupations of direct sales and signage. He doesn't have either of those. Number 10, he doesn't need off-street parking or loading. If he were to continue to receive deliveries from customers at this location, we do think he's going to need to do that within a structure. So we're not sure if that's going to be something that he'll be able to work out. Hours of operation are a concern because we just don't know the details on how late he receives pallets. In his petitioner statement, he indicated late afternoon or early evening, and the code doesn't allow operation past 8 p.m. And then again, commercially licensed vehicles, we don't believe that a CDL license is required for the type of vehicle that he uses, but we just ask him to confirm that. And then 13 is the big one, where deliveries aren't allowed for home occupations outside of typical deliveries that you would receive on a residential parcel. So the types of residential delivery services that are typically used for residents are allowed, but nothing outside of that. So he's requested a variance to that because he receives roughly 70% of the pallets that he recycles are delivered to the site, and then he picks up the other 30%. So that is why he has requested a separate variance, because that is something that he is not sure that he can meet under his current operation. So those are the conditional use standards, and that are specific to home occupation. And then of course there are other typical conditional use standards as well. Again, this one's a little complicated. We do think that there are, of his current operation, multiple aspects don't meet code. However, if he can change his operation to meet them, we do think that he could, easily meet the home occupation standards if those things can be done within an accessory structure. And so that is part of the conditional use standards. Related to the deliveries variance, We did not find practical difficulty on the site that would indicate that he needs to, that the site requires, delivery acceptance. This is always a hard one, as you know, for development standards, you have to meet these 3 requirements. If he can meet all of the requirements of the conditional use, we think 1 and 2 are fine. It's that the strict application of the ordinance resulting in practical difficulty has been hard for us to find. We don't know that we think that the property is peculiar in this situation that requires variance to allow delivery, especially considering he does pick up some of them, it's clearly a product that can be picked up. So you may hear more information about that and the details tonight that maybe we don't quite know yet. It's hard because we're calling them deliveries. I do think that based on their scale and what we've seen from pictures and even ones submitted by the petitioner, that it is large scale. But really, those are kind of his clients that, they're coming to his house like a client would for any other home occupation. It's just that they're leaving something behind. Whereas, if you were doing some sort of like beauty parlor or something inside your house, we think that what these clients are, the interaction of these clients may be a little bit more intense. So as I said before, as operating now, we would recommend denial. The petitioner, as I also mentioned, has been on the site for over a decade. We have, you will see that they also submitted a letter from some of the neighbors indicating, that they don't find the business to be disruptive, that they would like him to be able to continue to operate, meeting kind of those first 2 requirements for the development standards variance. So we have written the report in such a way that if the petitioner thinks they can meet the outstanding requirements for home occupation, including operating inside of the accessory structure entirely, no outdoor storage whatsoever, operating within the 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. business hours, that we think that you could approve the variance with those conditions, and that we would ask that they record a zoning commitment indicating that once he is in compliance with those, and we could issue the conditional use permit. We do not, again, find that the request for deliveries is able to be, that findings can meet those requirements. So we are recommending denial on that portion, and included that here as a condition, since it's one petition, just to be clear that yes on the conditional use with conditions and no on the variance. So I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Is the petitioner's representative here this evening?
You'll need to unmute. Yeah,
Who is
there you
that?
go.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
This
Yes.
is Vince Taylor speaking, and I'm an attorney representing Bob Iatarola, and he's sitting right next to me.
Okay, can I ask you please to, I just swear you in, even though you are technically an officer of the court, but do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
Okay, and could I do a separate one, please, for Mr. Iatarola?
Yes,
Could you state your name, please?
Robert Iatarola.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to present your petition. Thank you.
Can you give me the time you have right now so I can keep track of it?
Yes, I have 5:53.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
The first thing I want to do, because I want Bob to be as much, if not more, in this presentation than me, because it's his life and it's his job and it's his desire. But the first thing I want you to do is to have him give you a background as to how he ended up doing what he's doing and why, and the fact that he is in Bloomington doing this. He's a model citizen. He's one of the greenest people you probably would ever know. He's been involved in recycling for years. So I'm just going to give him some time now to let you know what his background is in terms of his past work lives and in terms of his connection to Bloomington. Bob?
yes. My name's Robert Iatarola, and I live on 1504 West Arlington Road, and I came to Bloomington in '76. I was recruited by IU football, Lee Corso, and I've been here ever since. Go ahead.
And go ahead and talk about your recycling background
Yes,
and how you got into
Right,
this business.
and at some point, a friend of mine, Graydon Murphy, he decided to open a recycling center on the south side of town on Rogers. Before recycling was really a big thing in Bloomington. Bloomington started around that time with the curbside pickup, but there was no place to drop it off. And Graydon started this, and I ran his business. I can't remember how long ago that was. It's been a while. And we did that until it was sold to Monroe County, which is now in South Rogers. And after that, I started running a recycling pallet company out in Gosport for a period of time. And my family, me and my wife got separated, and she went up north. I moved up to my mom's, and I ran a recycling company up in Hammond, a pallet recycling. And I've been in the pallets ever since.
Now, I wanted you to know that the staff recommendations, we did just receive those. Even though this process, and I understand why it was postponed, because there were some possible changes to the zoning ordinance and those things that apply to Bob's situation. And so we've been involved with this for quite a while. Ryan was our planner, and then, as you know, he left, and then Jackie took over. And I don't know how much work was done when she took it over, or whether or not she had to do most of it. But we just received the staff recommendations. I think they were emailed to me at the end of last week, and the first I saw them was Monday. So some of what Jackie has discussed are things that we've just been discussing this week in terms of how these things might affect him and what he might have to do to try to make his business comply with this. Two things, though, I did want to address in the packet, and Jackie, I don't know if you can help me with this in terms of showing parts of the packet to the board members, or if they have, and I don't even know if they have copies of the packets in front of them. Jackie?
They should. Yeah, they should.
Okay.
Hold that up. Go ahead.
All right. I wanted to show, first of all, the letter at the end of the packet in terms of the impact upon the surrounding neighbors. Every surrounding neighbor of his supports his position. There are a number of pictures in the packet that I hope we can get to as well that show how cleanly his business is run. And the time that the initial pictures were taken, which is like this one, the reason it was like that was because he was in the process of having his entire driveway resurfaced. So not only did he have people working on the driveway, but he was trying to continue his pallet business. So if you could go down, Jackie, and show the pictures that we submitted along with our packet. This is, yeah, go ahead. No, they're past those, you're right. And Jackie, do you know if those were taken by a staff member, the ones outside of a window of a car?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Anyway, so this is what it looked like after he got the driveway in. And if you drive by this area almost any time of day, that's about the busiest that this area will ever look, is either that truck sitting there with pallets on it, or pallets being loaded on it with a forklift, or unloaded. You can see these pallets are being, is that from your truck they're being unloaded
Yes.
from in that last picture?
Yes.
But anyway, so it's interesting that he is able to do something like this, because pallets can be a nuisance. And the thing that I think is very positive about what he does is that he does it very efficiently. He does it very cleanly. He does it with a very small footprint, and it has absolutely no impact of any of his surrounding neighbors, because they all have submitted one letter that they've all signed saying they love it. In other words, they think he's an excellent neighbor, and they don't think this business detracts from them at all. The other thing I want to mention, if somebody start to say something, I don't want to interrupt anybody, so cut me off if I'm going over. Is it this? I've always lived on the north side of town. I lived on West 13th Street for a number of years, and now I live up by the high school. So I know this area very well. This is Arlington Road, where it branches off from 17th Street. As you know, that's the way people used to go to Ellettsville. It's not the main it's not the main thoroughfare anymore. So I'm really familiar with this area. And the thing that's significant about this area is that it's a mishmash of different uses. It's like most of the entrances to Bloomington. As you know, if you come in from the north or you come in from the south, you're going to pass a lot of businesses, you're going to pass residences, and there's a great variety in terms of the number of things that are going on. Jackie, could you go to the letters that I sent you in neighborhood pictures of the surrounding properties?
Just a second.
It starts with a chiropractor's office.
Hold on.
Essentially, what I did is she's getting this together is that there's a stretch of property from, I'm sure most of you know where the roundabout is, that 17th goes into, and then from that, Arlington goes off to the northwest. 17th goes a little bit south, but goes pretty much west. And then I believe it's, what is the street? Monroe Street, then I believe that goes up by the middle school. So what I started, I went to the roundabout, and this is Arlington that I'm walking up, and this is the first property, and the first property past the roundabout, or at the roundabout, is this chiropractor's office. Could you show the next one, Jackie? Let me get a drink, I'm getting dry. The next lot, as you can see, is not being used for anything right now, but it is for sale as a commercial property. Now the next one, this is just an example of a home that on this side of it has a pretty much a bare field. The house sits on a large piece of property, and that's all that is. Can you go to the next one? All these are leading up to Bob's house. This is a lot that, as far as I can tell, is more like a jungle. I don't know what's back in there because I didn't walk back in there, but it's very difficult to see what's back in there. Can you go to the next one? This is a property that is right next door to Bob's that has, how many residential units does this have on it?
Three residential. It's got bags. He's got used to be a daycare center, but now it's just a rental house. And he's got one in the back where his son lives.
Okay, and then the next one? And then this is another house. Actually, I think this house comes before the one you just saw.
It does.
But this is another example of a house on a piece of property, part of which is maintained, part of which is not. And the trailer, and there's some kind of a shell of an appliance laying there. The next one. Now this is the property across the street, directly across the street from Bob. And as you can see, there's two food trucks to the left of that. And there is currently, what is there, a pole barn that's being constructed on that property?
And he's got a couple other storage units, and he's got two vans and a smaller truck. They're all food vans.
Okay.
And he runs his business from there and down there by the Trojan Horse.
Okay, can you go to the next one? This is it's called Arlington Apartments, and that's past Bob's house. But as you can see, it's a stone building with a yard that probably hasn't been mowed for quite a while. And all of these properties are in this, what's called a residential neighborhood. The next one, Jackie, it's just the church, but it's also, I mean, it fits into this area along with everything else, but it's something different than you'd expect to see in a restricted residential neighborhood. Next, this is a business called Wind Supply. Once again, all these have been between the roundabout and where Arlington crosses over the bypass. And so these are the last two properties before you get to the crossover the bypass. And the next one, please. And then this is I don't know exactly what it is. It's some kind of a warehouse. You see it's got trucks. It's got a number of vehicles there. And Bob says it has all types of things stored back in the woods by that. But I just want you to know that when we're talking about Bob's businesses, these are all the things that surround the area he lives in. This is across the street and a little bit east. This is a Heartland adoption agency. I don't believe it's in business anymore, and that's why it is also for sale as a commercial site. And the next one. This is Joe Ross's law office. It's been there quite a while. There's nothing wrong with the building. It's a very nice building, but it's also commercial. And then the next one. This is near to where the Arlington Road goes over the bypass. This is a huge development. I don't know exactly what all is going back there, but there's a very large apartment buildings, at least one. If you drive 69 and you're going south to north, and let's say you're getting ready to take the exit to the bypass, you see a huge apartment building that it's just the wood structure so far, but you can see it. You can see there's an active office there. There are active sales going on back there, and that is part of this residential neighborhood as well. Next. Now, this is the lot that is actually east of Joe Ross's law office. This is I believe the last one I've got to show you. And it's just an empty lot, but you can see there's an old commercial sign, and that's being sold for commercial uses as well. So in terms of considering this, I just wanted it to be done within the context of the surrounding properties. And I said it's what you'd see in most towns when you drive in from out of town to in town. You cross, there's a mishmash of what is there. It's like you've got a section on the east side. If you're coming from Nashville, there's an area there that's almost exclusively residential. But before you get there, there's a lot of business. And then after that, it's almost exclusively business. The south side, you know what the south side is like. My law office and golf course is on the north side of town, and it's the same thing. This is a copy of the letter that was circulated among the neighbors. And this man is just a wonderful neighbor. So whenever it says one of the reasons for regulations and restrictions are to accommodate and for the benefit of the surrounding neighbors, I wanted you to know that all of his neighbors love him. Thank you so much, Jackie, for going through those. Bob, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I've upgraded my property since I've lived there. I got it for $30,000, and I'm sure I'm being taxed for about $300,000 now. And also, the pallets I pick up are used all the businesses, the food bank. I pick up Monroe County Jail. I pick up the switch yard. I pick up I pick up a lot of businesses. Blooming Foods. They've been one of my longtime customers, and there's probably about 30 that I could keep on naming. So I pick up a lot of businesses every day around Bloomington, Ellisville. And then when I go out of town, I have a few big customers down Mitchell and Bedford too.
So could you briefly describe, you've got two kinds of pallets. Can you tell what you do with the pallets that you get?
Right. The 4840 are the grocery manufacturer pallets, which are the most used pallets probably in the United States. And they're abundant. And our hardwoods are 70% of all our Indiana hardwoods are used for these pallets. And a lot of them are going into the landfills, and they're valuable. It's a valuable asset.
And what do you do with them?
I take them to companies that refurbish them, and they're used over and over and over again. There's so many businesses that just throw them into the dumpsters and off to the landfill. Crane's one of them. I've approached them several times. They throw hundreds of pallets away every week in our transfer station. But I think that our landfills don't need to be filled up with our hardwoods either. Bloomington needs a recycler. A lot of people will stop by there, ask if they get a pallet or two. I always accommodate them. Usually free of charge for their basement or something they want to put in their garage so they keep their stuff off the ground. But the block ones, they're not very, pallet companies don't really want them. So they're abundant and the farmers do want them. So I do take pallets down to about 2 or 3 farmers south of us. And the other ones I take either down to Louisville or Indianapolis, depends what the market's paying. I have a pickup truck and a flatbed truck. And I have a forklift. Those are the 3 things I use. I don't have any semi trucks ever. As of right now, I only have 2 people making deliveries to me in Bloomington with pallets. So I'd say I'm actually picking up 50 to 60% of my pallets right now. And I do think I can run this out of my backyard, out of my back acre back there. I think I can put up a pole barn, tear down my garage, and do everything right out of that building.
So could you go ahead and address that further? Because you just got a copy of this the first of this week, right?
It's 840 square foot, which would be plenty of room. But I'll have to tear down the garage to get that 840. And I probably have to increase a little more concrete. But I don't believe it'll be seen from the road. And as of now, most of the pallets I do store are not seen from the road. And I try to keep my place pristine to the public. And when those complaints were made, we were pouring a lot of concrete and there was no place to really put the pallets at the time. And I apologize for that.
And those were the pictures.
Those were the
that Jackie
pictures that
showed
were
early
sent.
on.
Percent when the person made the complaint.
And generally, if you see pallets, the only time you ever see pallets at your property now is if they're on your truck.
Right. When I load it, takes about me an hour to load it. When I have enough pallets, I run them. I've got a diesel engine and it's more efficient for me to run a load, and it's more efficient for these guys, the few people that live around Bloomington, to bring me them instead of run 60, 70 miles to sell them.
And in terms of the neighbors that signed this, are those all of the neighbors around your property,
That's
around
good.
your house?
Every neighbor around my house signed that.
All right, well, how else would you respond to the recommendations that the department has made? What about the issue with regard to if you have pieces and carts of pallets, for example?
Yeah, well, if I don't have room for my dump trailer, which I usually dump 3 or 4 times a year and that's it, I'd probably have to rent something from Rumpke or something and put it in a trash bin, which I have no problem with that. And I think as far as the value of the property, I think I increased the value of the properties around there.
Well, anyway, as I said, he's just recently gotten this, but I was, because I know nothing about this. And I felt very positive about this when he said he thought he could make this work. But he's just a wonderful guy, and he's as green as they come. And he really cares about the community, and his neighbors just love him. So, based upon that, we just as soon open this up to any questions that you may have of us. Or
Thank
other
you.
recommendations, Jackie? Any other points you want to make?
Thank you very much. We are now to the board for questions of the staff or the petitioner. Who would like to start? Who has a question? I'll start with a clarification, Jackie. If you could you just restate what the number 13 delivery, the parameters are for home business at home occupation? What is that exactly? That's
Sure.
standard?
Yes, the exact language is deliveries to the property shall not be permitted except those by typical residential delivery services at a frequency similar to homes that do not operate a home occupation. And I
Okay.
can put that up on the screen if that's easier.
And so this falls under, this obviously falls under as a development standard variance. I guess. this
Yes,
is
it's a use-specific standard.
a use-specific standard. Okay.
Yeah, for home occupation. It's right here.
The release of unnatural nature products.
So we had some internal debate about whether or not these are deliveries. I think in the sense of delivery, something getting dropped off at your house, they clearly are. But these are really his clients, and what he does for his business is recycle products for his clients. And
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just, I mean, I think when it's written, it's picturing, trying to make sure you're not getting like large scale deliveries. And if it's someone who's driving to your house in a pickup truck and leaving something so that you can then move that, down the kind of supply chain. I don't know. We kind of went back and forth about whether or not this really kind of meets what this delivery standard is trying to stop. Because if you had a home occupation that was taking place in the home that was personal service related, your clients would be driving to the house and, parking in your driveway and staying there for a while, getting the service in the home or accessory structure and leaving. The difference here is that the service he's providing doesn't actually happen in his home. So they drive to the home and then they have to, leave something there for him to complete the service. It's just a little, I think, odd. That was kind of our only way of thinking that we could continue. And of course, you guys, may have come up with your own findings. Our only way of thinking that we could continue to allow some sort of operation similar to what he's doing now, related to having people drop off the pallets, would be that, some sort of interpretation that it really wasn't a delivery in the sense of what this means. But
Okay.
I don't know, we couldn't quite get there.
Okay. So let me just ask you, so if Mr. Ayatollah were to pick up and bring the pallets back to his house, those would not be deliveries at that point.
Right. Yes,
Uh-huh. Okay. So that's an operational change.
correct.
Okay. Then another question I had is this was recently rezoned. Was there any consideration at that time to zone this property to something else? I don't know what zoning category the home occupation would no longer be
Sure.
relevant.
Yeah, so the only, we did discuss it, of course, because we knew that this was kind of in the wings. The issue is that the comprehensive plan designates this, not only this lot, but basically the entire surrounding immediate area as neighborhood residential. So, which is primarily residential uses with some, as you saw in the report, it does allow for some pockets of commercial. But when we kind of talked it over, rezoning this one lot just to address an enforcement issue, that doesn't have another kind of characteristic that would make it be suitable for commercial, didn't really make sense. I mean, it would be old strictly to address this issue.
This issue.
For example, in a traditional neighborhood area, which also a lot of the comprehensive plan neighborhood residential designation are more what you would think of as traditional neighborhoods. You might find a commercial node on a corner or, intersection of two large streets or something. This didn't really have any of those types of characteristics, would only have been strictly to address the enforcement.
Okay. Okay, because the commercial activity is sort of discontinuous along this stretch.
Right. It is more, when he's describing where those commercial areas are, he's talking about at the roundabout or north at they are kind of at the intersection areas primarily, and the areas south of here, this area south to the roundabout was rezoned to multifamily. So also you'll see, and I don't know, board member Burrell could speak to this probably could explain this better than I do. What we see a lot is that when properties are listed, when they're listed for multifamily, it will say commercial because of the type of listing that is, to maybe make it clear that it's not single family. So that, like in the first image that they showed where it said commercial, then underneath it said multifamily zoning. And so that is what some of this area is along with this property.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about deliveries, he said that he's doing about 50 to 60% of the pickups himself. So he has about, let's say, 40% delivered to him. How often, how many trips a day or per week are those deliveries?
That's a good question.
Just trying to get a sense for.
I would say a really, really great week would be about 5 deliveries. This week I had 3. I think next week I'm thinking about 2. So that's not a lot. But,
Okay, so it's not on the hour, every hour, somebody coming and delivering.
Oh, no. No,
Okay.
but I did hustle a lot, but the prices got real high this summer. I did go buy pallets from like granaries, and then I took them straight to the customer. I didn't even come home. So I did a lot of that this summer because the prices got so high. It was just,
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the business and understand what the deliveries,
yeah.
how the deliveries work.
Yeah, so say I bring home 20, 30 pallets and somebody else brings it, but my truck holds 220 pallets, my flatbed. So when I get 220 brown four-way brown pallets, as soon as I have a load, I deliver it. So I'm lucky to get 2 of those a week. Very lucky.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Barry.
Please, Joe. Mhm.
This is for Jackie. It sounds to me, looking at the recommendations, recommending approval, that essentially you're trying to bring the conditions that are stated, essentially bringing it into use requirements. I mean, that's what it looks like. Is it? Would that be
Correct,
accurate?
yes.
Jackie?
Yeah.
So really what we're talking about is we just wanted to bring it into use requirements, and if he was in use requirements, would there be a need for a conditional use or variance? If he did,
Yes.
there
So,
still would. I'm
yeah,
with.
so
I'm with
if he
Lauren.
had, for example, not started this business yet and came to us and said, hey, I want to run this pallet business, we'd give him the 13 objectives. He'd say, if he said, I can meet all those, we'd say, great, we'll take you to the Board of Zoning Appeals, we'll recommend approval, and that'll be the end of it.
Maybe I'm not asking the question right. So I'm looking at these 6 conditions,
Yes.
right, that you recommend. If he were to conduct to do these 6 conditions, he would be in compliance, would he not?
He would be meeting the use specific standards for this particular conditional use.
Okay.
So he would be meeting the standards, so we would be able to recommend approval.
Oh, I see. He would still need a conditional use.
Correct.
Okay, I understand that now, that the way it's explained. So essentially, we're just asking him to come up to standards, and then if he does, this is just preempting him doing it. We're just saying, you do all these things, we're fine.
Right. We're kind of
Go do
saying
all
this
those
is
things,
a,
and then
yeah.
come to us.
This is a weird one.
Yeah.
Since it's already going on, we're kind of saying, we don't know enough about the business. We would like you to explain to the BZA, do you think you can meet all these requirements? If you do, then you meet all the requirements and they should approve it. But
So-
if these are unrealistic, then they can't.
So what's the follow-up by the city on this? Is this like you have so many weeks, months, years?
Right.
What is that?
I think what we were hoping for was with the discussion tonight between the petitioner and the board, him giving you a timeline for when, if he thought he could meet the conditions, that he would supply a timeline, and you all would determine if you thought that was reasonable, and we would include that, amend the conditions to include that those things needed to be done by a certain time.
Because it begs the question that there seems to me that if we were to say, look, we're not going to continue with this discussion, we're going to just let you bring it up to the proper standards, then come back and we'll give you the conditional use. If we did that, then he would actually have to suspend his business. So what we're trying to do here is allow him to continue his business until it comes up to standards.
Right. He is working to try to be compliant.
And now we have to come up with how long will it take for him to build a secondary structure in order to house the business. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so then the question becomes, how are we supposed to determine a reasonable amount of time?
But excuse me, Jackie,
Uh-huh.
but there's a further caveat here. Basically, they have filed for a development standards variance saying that they can't meet the number 13 on deliveries, correct?
Yes. So you all will, if you go with the staff recommendation, you will be saying you have to meet all 13. So you have to find a way to meet them all. If you can keep operating. Let's set a deadline for when you will build the accessory structure and be fully operational within the code. If you aren't done by that time, staff will start, enforcement, NOVs and escalating the NOVs into fines. And then that's his option to, if he wants to continue to run the business, he'll meet the requirements set forth here. And if he can't, then he has to stop.
But we can also approve a variance for the
Yes,
deliveries,
That is
correct?
correct. Correct.
So if we approve a variance for the delivery, that's a moot point, correct?
Correct. You would have to
It's
propose a
it's a moot
finding
point
for that
number
number
13.
3.
Pardon me?
It's a moot point for point number 13, but not for the overall.
Correct, correct.
Yes, correct. Yep,
Okay.
we would ask that you, the way I wrote the finding, as I've mentioned, was kind of a suggestion of, yeah, you would have to change the third finding about, and supply what do you think the peculiar condition on site is that requires that he accept deliveries. Where
I
in
think
all
it
other
begs-
modifications we don't allow. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think it begs the question of the deliveries. I mean, if he's saying 5 a week, I mean, I get more Amazon packages than that a week at a residential house. So I would say is, that he's not with, out of that realm of deliveries.
I think that's a good point, but I think the condition is the type of delivery. These are large trucks with large pallets. It's not a Amazon Sprinter van with a 4.5 inch by 7 inch box. So these are large, and to the point of they're sitting right behind the mailbox out on the street. That goes to speak to the size of things that are being delivered. So they're not small trucks that come in, even though some stuff can come in on pickups. But if he's going to load up 240 and then come in and out with that, that's a lot of material that's being moved out of a home-based business.
But okay, so I'd like to ask for a clarification exactly so we can understand what those vehicles are that are making the deliveries, because the point is it's hinging around the deliveries. It's not Mr. Attarola's vehicles, because he's allowed to bring material back to his property. It's what's being delivered. So what type of vehicles, if you could explain the size of them and compare them to like a FedEx truck to us, give us a sense of what that looks like.
It's a flatbed truck. It's approximately 18 foot long, the bed, and the cab's probably about 4 foot. So it's probably 22 foot long altogether. It would be equivalent of me having my pickup truck with a long car hauler. It would be about the same. It's just more efficient and easier and safer to use the flatbed than like a gooseneck trailer or something, which are around the property too. People haul their race cars and stuff. And yes, it does look a little monumental when they're stacked 22 high, according with the gentleman. But it is very safe. We scrap them and up to the DOT code. And it does look pretty awesome when you're driving by there when the truck is full, but it won't be
Mr.
noticeable in the back.
Can you explain when a local business is bringing you pallets, what vehicles are they using?
They use their pickup trucks for the most part. One guy sometimes uses a small trailer, like a lawn trailer, like a tractor trailer, a lawnmower trailer.
So the deliveries are not being delivered on a flatbed, they're delivered on pickup trucks?
People that bring them to my house are on pickup trucks, correct? I picked up.
So small scale vehicles.
Yes, very small scale.
Okay, thank you.
It's just like guys going around Bloomington that have a private trash. They use a pickup truck or a flatbed too. And they're parking on Bloomington streets.
Jackie, is this new information for you?
No, I mean, no. So I think it's the language, like Joe said. Here again, I'll share it. Deliveries to
Okay.
the property should not be permitted except those by typical residential delivery services at a frequency similar to homes. So like, yeah, like a FedEx or UPS or USPS. It just doesn't address it just explicitly says other types of deliveries aren't allowed. And then you can imagine that when it was written, it's like, okay, you can't have any deliveries, but they want to be able to, of course, exclude the types of deliveries you would already be getting there if you just lived there. So then that's how they exclude the other typical residential delivery services. But I mean, I do think it is a fair point. And I tried to mention a little bit earlier that the idea is probably to exclude lots of extra truck traffic, and this particular use doesn't appear to be generating that.
Right. Okay, I guess I'm just searching for a way that, and I don't know if we're at a point where do we have purview to find a way to say that the variance in the way that we interpret the deliveries, that the development standard variance isn't required?
Mike, can you weigh in on that? I do, or I'm sorry, I'm going to weigh in and then ask you to clarify. I feel like you probably do, but Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm remembering, for example, when we had a conditional use, request for a particular use near 2nd and Rogers, and we had 2 on the docket, and you ruled in one I believe that you didn't think it was necessary. We didn't even hear the second one. I don't know if this is ringing a bell for anyone, had related to, I just can't think of the use name, but where basically you ruled that you thought it was a medical clinic and not a rehab facility. And so we didn't even hear the second one. Mike, is that related or similar?
I'm so sorry. I'm not fully understanding the question, Ms. Clapper, but I do. Was that an ICFR case, Jackie?
No, it was it was transitions, and
that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. I guess the question is, and I kind of brought this on us earlier by saying, is it possible for the BZA to say that what's happening with people dropping off these pallets really isn't technically even deliveries, because it's not? That's all. That's what she's asking. Is it possible for them to say they don't think that this is deliveries as described in the UDO?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's necessary, right? Because the question we would have, I don't know that that's, sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry, because then they would say, we don't think a variance is necessary.
Yeah, they absolutely could do that. But it still could be an enforcement question somewhere down the road. So I don't want to foreclose that route, right? Do you see what I mean, Jackie?
Yes. So we would say yes, that the variance is denied, but that the types of uses, the types of traffic to the home you've described, which is 5 or less local businesses dropping off pallets a week, doesn't actually fit the definition of what the UDO is thinking of as deliveries. So we're not precluding that, but we are saying you can't get deliveries as described in the UDO.
That's a decision that's coming from city, though. The city's saying that that's their interpretation rather than BZA.
I think that's correct from an enforcement perspective. I think that's correct, Mr. Throckmorton.
Yeah, one issue I have is I do think the variance agreement is a leverage for meeting the conditional use, the 6 points that are currently outlined. I think, saying that, kind of withholding a decision on that until they come into the standard, the conditional use standard on the property, meaning the secondary structure. What I'm concerned about, and I've brought this up before, is anytime someone asks for a variance or a change like this, that sometimes these things just get lost with time and no one ever goes back guess what? The secondary structure was never built and things continue to go as they go. So that always concerns me of doing something like this ahead of time, saying, hey, we agree to it, so long as you make efforts to get this done on a timeline.
I think that's what Bob Iatarola expects.
Yeah,
I've
been wanting to do this
Excuse me,
city.
excuse
Oh,
me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
If you have something to say, this is really our time just to ask questions.
No, yeah, you'll have an opportunity, right?
To speak again a little bit later. Thanks.
So for the city though, Barry, I just want to say, I mean, the variance for that, for the delivery, the definition of delivery, I'm happy to play around with that. I'm just not really certain we want to just say yet. I'd rather the city say, no, it's not deliveries, than us say it. I don't think we're qualified to determine what deliveries are. And I think it's a slippery slope, us to say, oh, that's not a delivery. We don't know,
Well, I guess the issue that I'm having is right now, the way this is laid out, I find, I mean, we're having a discussion right now. This is question time. So does anybody have any further questions at this point? Because we have more time to discuss this and we still have to go to the public.
Yeah, my question is, how can we determine an appropriate timeline to come into compliance on the building? I mean, how are we going to come up with something like that tonight?
Well, I mean, we could definitely ask the petitioner what they anticipate in construction and how quickly, what is realistic. If you'd like to comment, Mr. Iatarola, on how long it would take you to come into compliance with these 13 points and build the new structure?
I would like at least 9 months, and I'd probably start immediately. I mean, the weather's going to change, and that'd be kind of hard to pour concrete and build buildings. I know people do it. But I would like to at least next July or June. And I think I immediately would tear down the garage and pour concrete there, and then start setting up the layout in the back.
Okay.
Which I walked through today. I've tape measure and everything. Changed my mind twice now on how I want the pole barn.
And you would want to continue to run your business during construction and during that time?
Yes, I would. But I might lower the price where it'll slow down to a crawl. So people won't bring me pallets. They might have to run them a lot further and tear up their trucks, but I would concentrate on getting this done, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
I guess I have a question. So there's no neighborhood complaints right now, but obviously this whole thing started because of a complaint. So when we go to build the second, if that were a second structure were to be approved, are we just going to get into the same, or we're going to have more complaints because your business you're going to have to move the pallets again where they're more of an eyesore?
I don't think so. The problem was before we were pouring concrete in the front and there was just nowhere to put them. When you put your gravel down and that and the forms and that and trying to get a crew together to finish it, I probably used a little bad judgment before by not just hiring somebody commercially, just instead of doing it ourselves. But I think it'll be a lot smoother I've learned a few things. It'll be a lot smoother this time around. I guarantee it.
Any other questions? Okay, if no one has any further questions, we'll move to the public. Is there anybody here this evening who would like to speak to this petition? If so, please raise your hand under the participants section. you can raise your hand and let us know that you would like to address this petition. Jackie, do you see anybody?
Not.
I don't see anyone.
No, I don't think we have anyone.
Okay, so then we are back to the board for discussion and action. Actually, before that, is there any remaining time?
Oh, they have 2 minutes.
You have two more minutes to provide any further comments you'd like.
I think Bloomington needs a pallet, someplace to recycle pallets. I think the businesses, I don't think we need to keep dumping pallets in the landfill. I really don't. I don't think we need to keep tearing down trees because cities might be narrow-minded about having someone recycling pallets in their town. I know they can be obtrusive, but I'm trying to keep it as aesthetic as I can. And I insist on pristine, and I really do. I just wish you guys would work with me on this. I've put a lot of time, a lot of years into this. It's taken a while to build up a nice business.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I have a question for the petitioner. Would it be possible for you operationally to shift your business to pick up more of the pallets, or to rendezvous and pick them up offsite? Would that be an option?
Not sure. For some of them, yes. For some of them, no. For some of them already live in, they really live in residential. And when they pick them up, they need to drop them off. They can't really be parking in apartment complexes and stuff. I don't know. One guy, he's been on it pretty hard, bringing them 2 or 3 times a day when he's in town. He lives in an apartment complex. But the rest of them, yes, I think so. And I do pick them up sometimes. It's on in one of my, after delivery, I'll make 3 or 4 stops and pick up pallets. Today, there was no deliveries at my house. Nobody brought any pallets. Not to say they might not yet tonight.
Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, discussions? Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve CU/V-19-20 with the following conditions, and I'll state. This approval is conditional use approval for a home occupation for a pallet business to take place in an accessory structure to be completed by July 31st, 2022. No other business or work is approved. Number 2, this approval does not approve the variance to allow deliveries to the property that do not comply with those excluded in 20.04.03 G6P. Period. Further, those deliveries may be redefined by the city. Period. Number 3, all the pallet business, including storage and transfer of pallets and storage of waste materials, shall take place inside the accessory structure that meets the size requirements of 20.03.030 G6G. Number 4, no outdoor storage, including a dumpster or trailer for storage or materials related to the business, will be allowed. Number 5, the business shall only operate on the site between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And number 6, the zoning commitment indicating compliance with 3 to 5 above shall be recorded in the Monroe County Recorder's Office before a conditional use permit is issued.
Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Any discussion?
I'll just start with the statement of why I want to do it this way. I don't think there's anything wrong with working with the petitioner. I think he wants to come into compliance. These 6 items will have him do that. It's also within about a 10-month period that he requested. So we're working on his timeline. And we're also giving some flexibility to the city to work on understanding the business more in those 10 months to find out whether the deliveries will be disruptive or not. If they are disruptive, then what remains in the second item will allow us then to say he's not in compliance, and will allow then there to be further action taken.
Does that sound good, Jackie?
Yes, that's fine with us.
Okay. Anybody else? Thoughts? If not, we're ready for a vote.
Can you just a second?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
excuse me, can you clarify then? So what we are saying about the deliveries is that he will be allowed to continue his business as he is doing currently if the city sees that the deliveries are non-obtrusive.
That's the intent of the proposal or the motion I just made, yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion is approval with the 6 conditions to amended. And Burrell,
Yes.
Soundborn,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
4-0. Thank you all.
So the petition is successful. Thank you.
We will
Thank
be in
you.
touch with the
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, we are on to the next. Oops, let me find my agenda. Okay, V-08-21 Starbucks Coffee Company. Petition.
Okay.
Staff report,
Thank you.
please.
Staff report, please. Here, sorry. The petition is located on South Liberty Drive, just northeast of the intersection of Liberty and State Road 45. Some of you have already seen this petition. This is Starbucks' 3rd appearance at the Board of Zoning Appeals. I will cover quickly for our newest member. The property is 1.05 acres. It's currently vacant. And this was part of a PUD, which has since been rezoned, but was PUD when filed. And the comprehensive plan designation is employment center. And surrounding uses include multi-tenant center, big box retail, restaurant, and financial institution. So you can see here with access and frontage off of Liberty. So the petitioner is requesting a variance to allow vehicle parking in excess of the maximum vehicle parking allowance for use restaurant. And that parking allowance is based on the number of seats allowed in the building and outside. So again, as I mentioned, we have seen this petition a couple of times. As we have asked with other petitions where petitioners are requesting more parking than is allowed by code, we asked for numbers from similar stores that have similar characteristics. In this case, near highway intersections, no street parking, no immediately obvious shared parking opportunities. And as a way of kind of justifying their request for excessive parking outside of what is allowed by code. So at this location, 11 parking spaces are allowed. The petitioner is requesting 33. They are not going over their permeable allowance for the site, or they're meeting, their permeable allowance for the site, and also including some spaces with permeable pavers. And you can see where the parking is located here. Entrance off of Liberty, parking on both sides, and then around the building with additional parking to the right and back out on Liberty again. We were in the previous staff reports having issue again with the number 3 here. What are the peculiar conditions related to property and use of the property that have been shown to the board and justified that the variance needed to be issued. So what we have received since the last hearing is counts from similar stores. So these are not parking spaces. These are actual parking counts. They were done at 8 a.m., which is right in the middle of their peak time. And the number of cars in the parking lot were counted every day for a week at these 3 locations, Starbucks locations. So again, the highest here at the peak time was 29 with a number of, I think 3 27s and a 28. And then obviously all the way down to, I believe the lowest was 17. Again, the petitioner is requesting 33 spaces. That is 3 times the allowable maximum per code. Based on the parking study submitted, the department is recommending that the variance be approved with a maximum of 30 parking spaces, which is still almost 3 times the allowable of code. But the numbers that were submitted for comparable stores, the highest was 29, and again with a more prevalent maximum of 27. So we feel that 30 is even a little bit probably generous, and are recommending approval with that maximum, along with condition that they will work with the department on the 3 spaces that need to be removed, which is something they'll be able to do within their site plan approval, and that this variance is for this particular parking space total only, and any other additional changes that don't meet code would require variance. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Petitioner? Who's here this evening?
Mr. Timko.
Mr. Timko.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can. Can you please say your name?
Yes, this is Mike Timko with Kimley Horn.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 20 minutes to present the petition.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for meeting with us tonight. As Jackie mentioned, this is our 3rd time coming to the BZA. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to come to a resolution tonight now that we've provided the parking study information that staff and the board have recommended. So I'll just recap very briefly some of the highlights that we've touched base in the previous 3 meetings. And then I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the board has. So like we discussed in the previous meetings, the reason we feel this variance is appropriate is because Starbucks has some very apparent unique characteristics compared to a traditional restaurant. So we don't feel that the typical language that would allow, the number of parking stalls based on square footage is appropriate. So that's why we're here with you tonight. We also believe that given the proximity to the interstate, that this site is a little bit peculiar from a typical site, particularly when it comes to a quick service restaurant, because obviously interstate traffic is going to drive those numbers up. We did previously provide, in addition to the study that was added onto for this meeting, we did provide also a study of the number of parking spaces provided at other Starbucks restaurants in the same region of Indiana. And that did yield that on average, those parking lots had 33 parking stalls on the dot. But then as Jackie stated, we did go ahead and do 1 week's worth of field collection to see how many cars were in 3 different stores during that peak time of the day. And it was a little bit less than the 33 available stalls that we were seeing at the other stores. So obviously our preference is still to stay at the 33 parking stalls. We do think they will get used, but our number 1 goal tonight is to come to a resolution and work with the board on coming up with the correct number that they feel is appropriate. So we do agree to do that. And we also agree that should parking stalls need to be removed, that we will be more than willing to work with staff on where those are most appropriately removed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Timko.
Thank you.
We are to the board for questions. Are there any?
My question is to the city. There were a series of photos that were submitted to us, overheads of various Starbucks. And in those photos, I only identified one that used more than, I think, 10, maybe 11 spaces when the photo was taken. My question is, did you see that, either Jackie or whoever is handling this, and did you see that doesn't that support, do you feel that supports our ordinance of not needing 3 times as many spaces? that are being
Yes, yeah, I think that's a good question. So yes, and we presented similar information for Ms. Sonborn. We presented similar information of aerials from our Starbucks locations here in Bloomington because something that had been submitted from Petitioner last time was total spaces at Starbucks's, and we said, well, they may have 40 spaces, but when you look at aerials over 10 years, there's only ever 19 cars there or something like that. So I do agree that does support our assertion that less is probably needed based on code. But I do think that based on how we have looked at this type of question in the past, we have given a lot of deference to the actual car counts. And we did that with Culver's, and because those are real days, I think it has made sense for us in the past to see days that are continuous, to see an actual kind of cycle of a week, as opposed to, one aerial a year that could have happened, that we don't know even what time of day or what day of the week it is. But yes, your point is taken.
Okay. A couple more questions very quick. To the petitioner, this is, in the 2 times that I've heard this, there's been reference that this is an interstate Starbucks where people exit the interstate, come off, go through the drive-through, get their coffee and leave. And that's how you're characterizing this, the majority use of this restaurant. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say majority. I would still think that the majority is going to be the local commuter.
But do you feel that they're driving through to get coffee, or that they're coming to sit down in the restaurant portion? The majority.
Yeah, so I would have to look back at the numbers, but as a part of the last meeting, we actually provided a breakdown of the number. And Jackie, I don't know if you have this with you, the percentage of people coming into the store versus the percentage of transactions in the drive-through.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking revolves around, I have come to the understanding based on the 2 presentations that the majority of the users of the Starbucks will be using the drive-through, not parking.
During peak hour by transaction, yes, that is true.
Yeah, okay. The second question to the petitioner is, we talked about this idea of having shared parking opportunities. After our past meeting, did you have any conversations about using widely accessible, what appears to be widely accessible parking across the street?
So the reason that we don't want to do that is actually because of safety concerns for pedestrians. We never encourage mid-block pedestrian crossings, especially on curves. So I would not be in favor of doing shared parking across the street.
I understand you're not in favor of it. I asked the question, however, of did you have a discussion at all with the people across the street?
No, I did not.
Okay. That's it for now. Barry, I'll see if I have any more later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any further questions? Flavia, were you reaching to unmute?
Yes. No, I was very pleased with the report. It's nice to see a report specific, and I agree with Jackie, when you were saying Monday through Friday in a specific time, and then you can see how it's working instead of one photograph that we don't know when it was taken from satellite. So meanwhile, I've been doing my own little research. So I've been I drove through a Starbucks on 46, and at similar times as I am going to show property, and it's always full in the peak hours. And I'm not talking about the drive-through, I'm talking about the parking. And I don't know if people park to use the facility, the restroom or whatever it is. But anyway, so I was glad to see this report. It kind of reflects of what I was observing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Timko?
Yes.
Could you comment on the rise of ordering ahead and people parking and going in and picking up? Because this seems to be a trend that has, happened a lot. It's on the rise, or it just seems a significant change over the last year or two.
Yes, absolutely. So that was unfortunately a byproduct of COVID. But we're finding very quickly that we don't see that going away even as COVID does. A lot of quick service restaurants are making that part of their typical site plan now. And I've seen a lot of restaurants do anywhere from 2 to 4 designated parking stalls, particularly for mobile order pickup. And on the site plan right now, we have 3 reserved spaces specifically for mobile order pickup.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we are going to go to the public. Is there anybody here this evening who would like to speak to this petition? Please raise your hand in the participants section.
I believe Dave is actually the petitioner, property owner. So I don't know if you want to let him speak. Just
Well,
FYI.
Okay, well, they'll have a lot of time here at the end. Yeah. So there'll be an opportunity. Anyone else from the general public who would like to speak to this petition? Okay. Seeing no one else at this time, we will go back to the petitioner or anyone from that party who would like to speak who has not yet spoken, or who has spoken. I just would need to swear you in if you haven't spoken yet this evening. So
Yes.
Dave, hi. Could you please state your name?
Dave Kamen.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, I believe there's a lot of time in reserve. Jackie?
Yes, that's accurate. There's like, I think 18 minutes or so left. 16 minutes, yeah.
Okay, so please. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I just had 2 quick points. Number one, Mr. Throckmorton asked if anybody did contact the neighbor, who I happen to be very good friends with, Tom Orman with Cowden Enterprises, and I did. And Tom said, "Why would you ask me that? That sounds crazy," is what he said, because of the concerns that Mike Timko mentioned, is that people get run over by cars and accidents and so on. So I did ask, unbeknownst to Mike, because I never discussed it with him, but I did discuss it with Tom, and he didn't think it was a very good idea whatsoever. The second point, and the last point that I'd like to make, is Starbucks provided the parking study, and I would agree that, you know, based on that study, 30 seems to be the right number. Bloomington, as everybody knows, I've been here since the early 1970s, has peak events, the basketball events, the football events, many different auditorium and so forth, and a lot of festivals and so forth. So maybe 30 is the right number, but maybe, like, you know, if we can split the difference, 32 or something like that might be more appropriate, hopefully 33. But I do believe during the peak events, those parking spaces will be needed. So those are the only 2 points that I wanted to make, is that I did talk to Tom, and Tom didn't think it was a very good idea to have people traverse across the street, and that the peak events would probably warrant the full 33 spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are back to the board for action. Would anyone care to make a motion?
We'd like to make a couple of comments before we actually have any kind of motion. I want to, first of all, thank Dave for 2 of his comments, which I think are quite relevant and pertinent. I do agree very much with cars are dangerous. And that was kind of my point 2 months ago. That many cars on that piece of property is dangerous. And that was kind of the point of the UDO. So yeah, I'm glad that he made that point, because it does stick to kind of what we were talking about 2 months ago. I also appreciate his willingness to talk about splitting the difference. And I actually think that's a great idea, which is why I had jotted down that let's split the difference and go 25, because they want 30 additional spaces. I'm sorry, they want 33. So they're asking for 33 spaces, right? So they have 10. So let's just split the difference. I think the city's being a little too generous by going to 30 for that space. The final thing that I do want to kind of stress is that, yeah, there's a roadway there, but the parking spaces as presented to us 2 months ago were really necessary for use of their employees. There is very close to that proposed building site, a intersection with a light, and there's no reason that a crosswalk could not suffice to keep people safe at a corner that's not very far from the restaurant. And so we're talking about employees using shared spaces that already exist across the street, keeping the spaces that we do end up allowing, if any, to be used by customers. So I think there are solutions here. I just think there needs to be some willingness to ask employees maybe to walk to a crosswalk and across the street like anyone might do downtown. Let's say if you park at a parking garage and go 3 or 4 blocks to work. So I appreciate those comments because I do think it supports some of my concerns. But I would say that if we were to change the recommendation on the 30 parking spaces to 10 plus half of what they requested additionally, I would support that type of motion. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment, or are you floating that number, Joe, to see what others on the board?
Yeah, 23. I believe they're asking, Jackie, is this right? They're asking for an additional 23 spaces?
They're asking, it's actually 11 is allowed, so they're asking for an additional 22.
22. So I'm saying, let's do what Dave said. Let's split the difference and let's give them 11 additional, and then they can go through any further petitions for additional spaces. But I think, first of all, I do want to stress this development can't go through under our UDO, from the plan department. There's nothing stopping them from developing. What's being asked for is additional spaces, but they can build this and their business can go forward. We're not preventing economic development from occurring on this site. What we're really talking about here is how many spaces, and if they're absolutely necessary, under this idea of a peculiar situation. It's not peculiar. We have existing spaces there for employees across the street. It just takes a little bit of effort to work it out. So it doesn't actually live up to our peculiar conditions here. So yeah, I'm willing to say let's go halfway and let's throw out a number of 22 spaces.
I disagree. I think this is can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I think this is a different type of business. This is not a restaurant as we look at as we look in the UDO. This is a unique business where people come in, buy a drink, use the restroom, especially when you're on the road, because you're going to find a clean restroom and caffeine when you're driving. So I see this as a unique business and not a restaurant that you're going to sit down. Yes, the place, it's in a curve, it's different things. I think we will become more of a nuisance if we don't provide enough parking. And I agree with the city, what they have proposed, the 30 spaces, no more. I think Jackie did a very good job in looking at the data and coming up with the findings for us. So I would like to make a motion to approve what Jackie has proposed.
So you're going to make a motion right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
I understand your comment. I think I'm responding to being told in our last meeting that essentially 10 of the spaces would be used at peak times for their employees. What I'm saying is, if we take the extra effort to use shared spaces or shared opportunities for parking, which I don't think is going to cause the business a problem. They will have enough spaces based on their own comments from our last meeting on this. That was my point, Bobby.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to make a motion to approve V-8-21 with the following conditions. As per the plan department recommendation. Number one, the variance is approved for a maximum of 30 parking spaces and no more than that. Number two, the petitioner will work with the department to identify the best location to remove the excess parking spaces from the site plan. Number three, the variance is for parking space total only. Any additional changes whatsoever that does not meet code will require additional variance. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I'll just make the comment that I think we're giving up too much. I think that we're missing an opportunity for a business to work responsibly to find alternative parking for their employees that's accessible. I just think it's a missed opportunity, and I won't vote for this.
Okay. Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Adopting the findings and approval of V-8-21 with 3 conditions. Sonborn,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Nope.
and Burrell.
Yes.
3-1. Thank you.
The petition is approved. Good luck. And thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, we are on to case CU-13-21. I don't know who's presenting. Oh, that's Keegan.
Yes.
Staff report, please.
All right, just one moment.
Thank you. Is everybody doing okay? We don't need a break or anything. Okay. It's not too bad.
Yep. I'll
Hasn't
be
been
brief.
that long, really. Okay.
Yep, as soon as it lets me present. Okay,
Thank you. Thanks, Keegan.
thanks. So this is sorry about that. I didn't realize I was muted. This is for the property located at 422 East Kirkwood, currently zoned mixed use downtown and in the University Village Overlay District. Surrounding properties are also in the same zoning district and character overlay district. The property is currently developed with a mixed use structure, commercial space on the ground floor and apartments above. And the petitioner is proposing a Raising Cane's fried chicken in the first floor commercial space of the structure. Their proposal involves a remodel of the space with new signage, and the property is not within any historic district or preservation survey, and this use does require approval from the City of Bloomington Utilities and the Health Department. The reason that this is coming before you today is because in the mixed-use downtown University Village district, a standardized business requires conditional use approval in order to go in there. And a standardized business, is defined as a business that has a uniform look or brand associated with it. So most, like major chain restaurants or things like that would be considered a standardized business under our code. Here is just a clip of the signage package that they submitted. A clearer image is probably in the packet, but this is just for the presentation. They're proposing the sign on the rear and then this awning sign here that has the channel letters and the small little sign next to it. So like I said, because this is a standardized business, it does require the conditional use approval. What the code says for a standardized business in the MDUV district is that the standardized business shall be designed and constructed in a style that visually complements its surroundings, especially the existing buildings on both sides of the same block, is to be located, as well as the character of the particular overlay district. Visual complementation shall include, but may not be limited to, architecture, scale, facade, and signage. For this petition, we're only really looking at the signage because that's the only part that they would be changing, other than the interior. Our proposed finding is that this petition does meet the criteria for a standardized business. The proposal does not call for any changes to the facade or architecture of the structure. They're only proposing changes to the signage and the interior. The proposed signage does show a differentiation from their typical Raising Cane sign package. The colors visually complement the surrounding structures by only using the red, black, and white color scheme, which is different from their typical color scheme. And it is, somewhat similar to the Chipotle restaurant that's located adjacent to them, if you're familiar with the area. And the channel letter sign is a unique sign design that is appropriate for the area. It's a minimal design, but readily identifies the restaurant, which we do feel like meets the criteria for a standardized business. For the other criteria for a conditional use approval, we find that this petition is in compliance with the UDO and other applicable regulations. No prior approvals are found, and the petitioner will comply with CBU and health department regulations. This development is in line with the goals of the comprehensive plan. The comp plan identifies this area as downtown, which is meant to be a commercial hub, offer a variety of businesses and services. And so this restaurant is ideally located next to other restaurants, and the MDUV district with the standardized business criteria kind of ensures that businesses in this district will maintain the character of the area while still allowing for new growth and development. This proposal fills a vacant restaurant space, which would improve the character of that block overall. This use will require a grease interceptor. The petitioner is working with City of Bloomington Utilities regarding any changes to utility capacity and grease interceptor work. No exterior changes are proposed with this conditional use approval. No additional lighting, no nuisance regarding noise, smoke, odor, vibrations, or hours of operation is found. The proposed signage will be required to meet lighting requirements, and no neighborhood meeting was required with this petition. So no adverse impacts are found. So based on that, the department recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopts the proposed findings and recommends approval of CU-13-21 with the following conditions: that this conditional use is limited to just this proposed use and no other use is approved. The petitioner must meet all City of Bloomington utility standards, including the installation of a grease interceptor. The petitioner must meet all Monroe County Health Department standards, and that a sign permit is required, and that the design shall meet that of the sign that was shown in this approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keegan. The petitioner's representative. Hello.
Oh, there we go. I see.
Could you please state your name?
Hi there, my name is Melanie Bagley. I'm the Property Development Manager for Raising Canes, and here with me tonight also is Dusty Johnston and Marissa Engel with ADA Architecture. And I would also like to note that our the building owner, Michael Eaton with Rubicon, is also in attendance here. Thank you very much for having us here at tonight's meeting.
Can excuse me 1 second. I just to swear you in first.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll see who else speaks. I'll have to swear each person in as they before they speak. Okay.
Of course.
Thank you. We have up to 20 minutes.
Wonderful. So I think Keegan did a wonderful job of going through the thought process and ideas that went into the signage design that you see here before you. It is quite a minimal design, but we are wanting to be very cognizant of the tenants above the proposed restaurant. What you are seeing here is different from what we would propose as a national brand that would be part of, as I would say, our prototype design. This sign design here on the front facade on the canopy is a channel letters with a small oval logo. And that is not typical of our other locations. There is a cabinet sign on the back, the oval, and that is back at the parking area. That will help identify. There are 3 parking spaces there at the rear that we will be able to utilize for the operation of the store. We had proposed a blade sign, but again, out of concern for the tenants and their well-being and keeping them up at night, we did eliminate that and have arrived at the design you see before you. I will yield the rest of my time to anyone with questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We are to the board for questions of staff or petitioner. Does anyone have one? No? Okay, seeing no questions, we will go to the public. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak to this petition? Please raise your hand. I do not see anybody. We're all clear, Jackie? Or Keegan?
Yep, I don't see anyone.
Okay, great. Then we are back to the petitioner for any further comments. You have
none here. Oh.
Okay. Then we are to the board for a motion or discussion.
I'll go ahead and move approval of B-17-21 with the following conditions of: 1, the site plan shall be amended to allow for 16-foot parking spaces in the building, and 2, the variance.
That's the next one.
I'm sorry, I pulled up the wrong one. My apologies. Just give me a second there. You have a big packet here, Jackie.
I know, we have cases tonight.
Sorry. I motion approval of CU-13-21 with the following conditions. 1, this conditional use is limited to the proposed use. No other use is approved. 2, the petitioner must meet all City of Bloomington utility standards, including the installation of a grease interceptor. And 3, the petitioner must meet all Monroe County Health Department standards. 4, a sign permit is required, and the design shall meet that of the sign shown in this approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. The vote, please.
So this vote is for approval. Conditions: Clapper,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Sonborn.
Yes.
4-0.
Okay. Thank you.
The petition is successful. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay, so our last petition of the evening is case V-17-21, Strouser Construction Company. Can we please have the staff report?
Sure thing. So this is for the property located at 1300 North Lincoln. It's in the northeast corner of the intersection of 17th and Lincoln. The property is currently zoned mixed-use student housing, and it currently has a single-family structure and 6-unit multifamily structure on the site. All surrounding properties are also zoned MS. The petitioner is requesting a variance from the required 8-foot side parking setback to allow for a 5-foot side parking setback. Let's see here, and here's just an overview of the existing conditions on the property. So the proposed site plan shows a 4-story structure with a mix of studio and 2-bedroom apartments. The side parking setback is required so that there's sufficient buffering between parking lot and adjacent properties. For this development, a portion of the parking garage is below ground. Because of the requirements for a 20-foot drive aisle parking and building setback requirements, the petitioner has designed the site so that a portion of the parking extends out below or extends out from below the building. Because it is not enclosed, it is considered a surface parking lot for that the portion that sticks out from the building. So the 8-foot side parking setback would be required here. The petitioner is showing 18-foot parking stalls. However, the UDO does allow for a minimum of 16-foot parking stalls for 90-degree parking spaces. So while this would decrease moving space in the garage, it would help to preserve setback and green space outside of the building. So there is a condition later on that we would like to see the 16-foot parking stalls rather than the what is currently shown. But so the petitioner is requesting a variance to allow for the 5-foot side parking setback. Here's just some renderings of the structure that's proposed. This was recently approved by the Plan Commission at their last meeting. For criteria and findings for a variance, this approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. No injury to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare is found with this petition. The petitioner will meet impervious surface coverage and landscaping total. They will have a reduced side parking setback so that they can still have sufficient parking on the site. The criteria for the use and value of the adjacent properties is included in this development standards variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. No adverse effect to the use or value of adjacent properties is found as a result of this petition. The proposed use is multifamily, which is permitted in this district. The proposed development is of a similar scale to adjacent developments and would improve the pedestrian infrastructure along 17th Street and Lincoln. And the proposed setback is also of a similar scale to adjacent properties. For the criteria, that strict application of the terms of the UDO will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property, that the practical difficulty is peculiar to the property in question, and that the development standards variance will relieve the practical difficulties. Practical difficulty is largely found in the fact that this is a 60-foot width, 60-foot wide property, and with the combination of the setbacks, minimum drive aisle, minimum parking space requirements, and parking setback requirements, it's very difficult for the petitioner to meet all of those regulations. There's not street parking available on both frontages, including some parking in the building is ideal for this location. For the petitioner to still have sufficient parking on the site that meets all other aspects of the UDO would require some encroachment into the side parking setback. The current design shown by the petitioner does not take advantage of the minimum 16-foot parking widths, which is allowed in the UDO, which would allow for a 7-foot side parking setback rather than a 5, which is only 1 foot of the required 8-foot side parking setback. So based on that, the department does recommend that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopts the proposed findings and recommends approval of V-17-21 with the following conditions: that the site plan shall be amended to allow for 16-foot parking spaces in the building, and that this variance is for a 1-foot side parking setback encroachment. Only additional or any additional deviations from the UDO would require variance approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Keegan. Petitioner's representative?
See, I see Ryan Strasser is here. Oh,
Hi. Could you please state your name?
This is Ryan Strasser with Strasser Construction.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes.
Okay. Hey, I won't be real long. Keegan's done a pretty good job of explaining our situation here. First, I want to just say thanks to hearing this case and possibly considering what we're looking for. As you can see, we have a really tight site, and we've been working with Matt Black Architecture and Smith Design on this project. And right now we're asking for the 18-foot parking spaces. We understand that 16 feet is allowed by the UDO, but we as a design team really think that the 16 feet does not take into account a typical underground in-garage type parking with columns, walls, reducing turning radiuses. That, as Keegan kind of stated, this is being applied saying the 16-foot will work because they're treating this as a surface parking lot because the end sticks out of the building of the spots. But in all reality, we're a parking garage, and typical parking spots would be more 17 to 18 feet at a minimum. 18 feet would be pretty typical. Drive aisles more like 22 or so feet wide. we're down around a 20-foot drive aisle, and going to 16 feet would start to really limit what we feel is maneuvering clearances, everything else within the garage. This is especially the case because we're trying to have ADA parking spots, which we think are parking spot, which requires some decent maneuvering clearance to get that van spot in the garage. So that's another reason we're looking for the 18 feet. I know in reducing the side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet, we do eliminate some of the green space on that side of the building, but we have in the large setback facing 17th Street, per Smith Design, located some additional trees and plantings that aren't even required by the UDO. So we've tried to up our landscape plan somewhat to make that side of the building towards 17th Street better, since we are going over into the north just a little bit with that setback. But at the same time, we still are meeting the landscape requirements on that side in the buffer yard, even with the reduced setback. Outside of that, that pretty well, I think, sums up what we have. I mean, in addition, I guess the last thing I would add is we are not maxing out the UDO parking space requirement for how many beds we have or anything like that. We're under that, so we're just trying to get the bare minimum of spots we can to fit and try to make the most usable parking spots we can. And we feel the 18-foot spots does that. So that's all I have here for any questions.
Thank you. We are to the board for questions of the petitioner and staff.
Keegan, can you show some of the elevations so we can see how this parking lot operates? Because this is not a normal, it's an underground, it's under the building. There you go.
Yes, so, and maybe the petitioner can speak to this as well, but on the, I think this is the west side is where the entrance is, where you enter the parking garage, and where you see this dumpster enclosure here. Behind that is where the parking sticks out.
Sorry, Keegan, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. I just want to point out that the reason the parking is sticking out is because there is a building setback on that side of the property of 15 feet, and they don't want to meet that. So what they wouldn't be able to have parking in this building at all. First of all, we're not required, parking isn't required, I don't believe here. Keegan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So they would like to have on-site parking, which is great. So we have worked with them so that they could do this kind of bizarre, we don't see this very much, hybrid building plan where the basically basement won't be visible from 17th Street, but from the northern side of the property, basically the fronts of the vehicles will stick out below the building, and there will be a retaining wall there. And so then all parking in the UDO has some sort of setback. So in order to be able to meet their the parking setback from 17th Street, they hid the building. They hid that level so that it wouldn't be visible from the road, so that they wouldn't have to deal with the 20-foot setback from the southern wall, but they still have to deal with the 8-foot setback from the northern wall. Because the property is only about 60 feet wide, we understand that there was going to be some difficulty meeting front setback, rear setback, and parking setbacks, and so an encroachment was necessary. So that's why they're asking for a 3-foot encroachment, which would leave a 5-foot setback instead of 8 feet. However, we have been saying to them for some time that, inclusion of the 16-foot parking spaces, which are now the standard in the UDO for minimum length for 90-degree, would allow them to still have an 8-foot, green space there on the northern end of the property, which would address, some of the reasons why you have those setbacks to begin with. And some of the concerns that were, for example, raised by the Environmental Commission, about prioritizing, do we want to prioritize vehicular parking over allowing green buffer space between properties? Yes, this is kind of a unique design. Again, it's basically the basement floor and there's no roof on it. So it's just open to the open air. So then we had to, we decided to go ahead and we determined that could meet the parking lot setback standard as opposed to the building setback standard, since it was not entirely enclosed, which gave them an additional 7 feet, which allowed them to be able to put parking in there at all. Sorry, I know that was kind of a lot of additional
Okay, so just to be clear, so if this encroachment, parking encroachment, if you will, was enclosed, would that make any difference?
If it was entirely enclosed, they would have to have it pushed back. It would have to meet, the building has to meet a 15-foot setback. So if it was enclosed, it would have to meet 15 feet. They could have, I believe we discussed this, we asked about it and they said it wasn't possible. Could it be buried basically so that you didn't even know it was there, so that it was enclosed and was green on top? And I was told that wasn't possible.
So who asked
in that case,
yeah,
I believe I spoke about that with Mr. Ellenwood, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, because in that case there wouldn't be a setback because it would be entirely under. I think we could have worked with the setback in a different way because it would have been entirely underground.
Right, they would have had a green roof essentially.
Yes.
And I guess that's my question. So can you put a green roof on the existing plan as it is?
Well,
this is Ryan again.
Yeah.
This is Ryan again, if it's okay. I think whenever we talked about doing the kind of an extension of the roof that became a green roof on that, I think our problem was because of the grade change as you go west on 17th Street and then get to 19th Street, that part of the building would actually then stick out of the ground down there. So then you could never fully bury that end of the building so that it was wholly underground. You were going to end up with some of it out, which then we believed would then apply to the 15-foot setback. Just because of the different grades, and because the grade really does fall a lot from east to west on the site.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel this right here was us working together with staff to try to meet the best interpretation of the code for a small, narrow lot like this within the MS zoning district.
Jackie, could you talk a little bit about the 16-foot parking depth? Because that is a change from our previous code, right? Which was at 18.
Yes.
And could you just talk a little bit about
sure.
the thought behind
yes. So what I know of it is that historically parking spaces are 9 by 18 minimum, unless they're compact spaces. And that when we were going through the process of doing the code update, we've looked at other codes and trends and changes, as we always do, to make sure that we're keeping updated with what makes the most sense. And parking space minimums in many places are being reduced to 16 feet. So that allows for and provides a better use of land, right? Where we're slightly dedicating less of our space to vehicles, but still having enough space for them to be able to, for vehicles to be able to utilize the parking lots and parking spaces. So yes, we reduced the parking space length for 90-degree parking to 16 feet, which has become a bit of a standard in our field.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that. Any other questions for staff or the petitioners? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak to this petition?
I think everyone here is related to this petition.
To the petition.
Or staff member or, yeah,
Okay.
or board member.
So there is no public, obviously. So back to the board for action or discussion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion I was before, which is approval of B-17-21 with the following conditions of the site plan shall be amended to allow for 16-foot parking spaces in the building. This variance, number 2, this variance is for a 1-foot parking side setback encroachment. Any additional deviations from the UDO would require variance approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll just make a comment if I could. While I understand the petitioner's point of view and wanting as much kind of space in the garage as possible, I feel like we are really trying to honor the intention of the setbacks, and that is very important to the city. And that from my own experience in parking garages, in terms of maneuverability, it's more often the width rather than the length that is at issue in allowing you to get in and out of spaces. So people may have to take a little extra care, and it may take a couple of maneuvers to get out, but this seems to be a safe situation, which is what we would want to make sure that, you know, we would be promoting. So I feel comfortable with the 16 feet, even though it may not be ideal from the petitioner's point of view. Anything else? If not, we are ready for a vote.
This is a motion to approve with staff conditions. Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Sonborn,
Yes.
Clapper,
Yes.
4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to the project, and thank you all for your time this evening. Thank you, Jessica, for stepping in.
Thanks for hearing our case.
Thank you. Be well. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.